Hello, my name is Devan Harrison. I'm going to talk about AI for estimation in the project management space. So we'll just get right into it. So I think the first thing that we should talk about when we talk about using AI for estimation is what is the current purpose of estimation in the PM process? So when we want to define estimating, we're really just saying, how do we forecast the time and cost of project deliverables? So in the project management process, I know this is at a super high level, but we're taking strategy and implementing it into an organization. And after defining what we want a project to be, we need to make estimates to understand how many resources we need to use and the total time that it'll take to implement a project. And really, we're looking at a trade-off where if we spend more money on estimation, then we're going to have less money for the project itself. So we want to find a good median where we're limiting the total amount of money spent on estimation while maximizing its effect on the overall time and cost of a project, because inaccurate estimations lead to extra spending and extra cost. So right now, though, we do see that with humans doing estimation that there are some clear pitfalls, right? 70% of projects fail to meet their budgeted constraints. And this generally comes from this thing called the planning fallacy. And that's where people think that their task will take less time, even when historical data is saying that it'll take longer. And this is a huge problem. You kind of notice it when you see that every single project seems to just go over budget and take more time than it should. And it leads to the US wasting 50 to $100 billion wasted annually across all organizations. As projects increasingly get more complex, we're seeing that humans are going to miss more important factors as they continue to get more and more complex. And when we talk about things that can be automated, we often want to look at what has repetitive work or things that don't take a ton of brain power, but a lot of time. And those are things like data collection, where humans spend hours trying to estimate and find prices, or the work breakdown structures, where, well, it's not super repetitive tasks to build. Oftentimes, there's a lot of due diligence that needs to go into that and making sure that everything is accurate. AI can do that much faster. And then lastly, we use case studies to see how we can compare our project to projects that have been done in the past. And oftentimes, there's only small bits of that, and there's a ton of different case studies. So similarly, AI can go through and look at hundreds of these significantly faster than a human. But before we get into the idea of generative AI, I do want to talk about machine learning. Machine learning has been around for a little while and it's beginning to get more and more popular. It's not our generative AI, but it's still super important in estimation. And machine learning is a type of AI that takes data and gives an output or a forecast based off of what the data was. So it's often used in things like price estimation or risk assessments. One of the major weaknesses of it, however, is that it does require accurate and good data. So if your data isn't accurate, then, well, your model isn't going to be accurate either. And oftentimes, these models can't understand nuance to the level that a human can. But of course, oftentimes machine learning is super value in predicting costs and time, as in one case, we found that a machine learning model predicted manufacturing costs at a 94% accuracy, which is far better than what other models could do. Going on to what's likely more important for the future is generative AI. And that's when we're talking about models like ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude. Now, these models can do machine learning and data collection, similar to what we had talked about, but they're also really good at simulation as they can program really quickly and identifying small critical tasks. And then what's likely going to be a major thing in the future is contingency plans, where they can spot issues and build plans that a human may not have even noticed. So we can see that they can constantly monitor KPIs because they're so much lower. And while that could lead to some false alarms, it does mean that they are significantly less expensive. So they're able to build contingency plans and make estimations far quicker than a human can. And that means that you can do it significantly more frequently. And we see that they already are having an effect where they have a 70 to 90% accuracy in terms of time and estimation or at time and costs, while menu methods have only 50 to 70% accuracy. And of course, when you reduce the price of estimation and get more accuracy out of it, we see that bar move down on the relationship between the project cost and the estimation of that trade-off. So we're seeing now that generative AI is expected to absorb 60 to 70% of all work today. And that means that if you have the same number of people, they're doing less work, and then they can focus on the more important tasks that humans need to do, like managing people and navigating organizations. I think that the most important thing that we want to look at when talking about generative AI, however, is this idea of dynamic AI in the estimation. And this goes into what I had talked about quite a bit earlier with AI building contingency plans. While it is true that it can do a lot of that really useful estimation, I think what is a potentially really interesting space is AI being able to dynamically and constantly monitor a project and continuously make new estimations that are more accurate as the time moves on. And this is going off of the phase model that we talked about in class, where every phase a new estimation is made. Of course, one could argue that that phase model is, well, it is a hybrid model, can be inefficient because you're making a new estimation constantly, and that costs a lot of people time. So when you add an AI that is able to do that significantly faster and at much less work compared to the people on the project, it leads to you being able to have accurate estimates while also not sacrificing the time of people working. And in this example here, you can see that it's able to make contingency plans. It's able to suggest how much more budget's needed. And an example of it being used would be a project going way over budget or a major risk occurring that leads to dynamic AI saying this doesn't work or you shouldn't do this in the future. You should stop and cancel this project because it is already not worth the time and the money of the organization. So, of course, I think while we do like to talk about AI as a super innovative thing, it does have some key drawbacks. The first that I think needs to be mentioned more, especially in estimation, is the requirement for really good data. Both machine learning and generative AI require quite accurate data, and models that are built off of poor data will be counterproductive and may even give worse results than what a human could do. They also generally can't be as problem-solving or innovative in singular cases. The example that always comes to mind is the Sydney Opera House, where there weren't any case studies of a structure like that being built. And that meant that like a system like generative AI wouldn't be able to go to a case study and base its number off of that. And in that case, potentially with the models that we have now, a human might be better at making those estimations than an AI, or at least a hybrid. The third that's become really important is the hallucination of facts. We see that AI has been really good at just randomly making up facts, especially in an idea of an AI that can constantly monitor a project. If it's hallucinating facts, that of course is not a good effect at all. And we want to make sure that it doesn't do that. So ensuring that the data is accurate, but also that the model isn't making inferences about it that just simply aren't true. And then, of course, what's very important and was mentioned in the Future of PM article was that there is a lack of the people factor. And AI itself cannot navigate an organization or navigate workplace politics. It can't do any of that. So human elements are still going to be needed. It's still going to need, AI will still need to be told what to do, and the effect of it is limited by that on its own. So kind of to wrap everything up, we see that human project managers will still have a role. And PMs should be constantly monitoring what AI gives as a result. AI is both powerful and risky, but it does reduce the total cost and can often increase accuracy at the exact same time. So right now we've been using data and scope and situation at the beginning of every project to make an estimation. But now if we add AI, we can reduce that time. And project managers can need to make sure that they're checking model accuracy, still building trust with sponsors and stakeholders. Only they can build that trust. The AI can't do it itself. And then understanding how people will impact the estimation and motivating team members to actually execute on it. So I hope that you guys learned a little bit about AI, and thank you for watching.